Okay, welcome. So today we're going to build a generative ambient hardware rack. So this is kind of like a backwards process because I've already built the rack and I just wanted to show people like what this process is like. I mean, to do an entire video, it would take literally like hours and hours because we're talking like there's a lot of research and a lot of time that goes into figuring out what modules to fit into a rack. So I've already built the rack. I know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the processes just so like if somebody's new to modular, or even if you've already built some stuff, like you might glean some things out of this. So the first thing I recommend is before you even start is to decide what you want to build and why. So I decided I wanted to make a 24/7 stream, or at least that's the goal. And I kind of like set up what I wanted it to look like. I wanted to have my desk and then have a small rack, which in this case is a 62 HP Intellijel Pallet Case. So it's a nice tiny rack that will fit in the backpack. It'll be easy to frame and shot. And then in the background, I wanted to have like a nice plant and then a window to the outside world, which, you know, may or may not be necessary, but this is just the idea in my head. And then the additional bonus of this is that I want to have the camera or another camera taking time-lapse photos of the plant. And what this will allow me to do is after, you know, so many months or however long that the project's been going on, I can compile all these photos into a nice video and then throw some ambient music, perhaps from the rig, on top of that and make a nice video. So that's the idea. So the thing is I want it to be generative, and generative in modular world really just means random, and then you kind of control the random parameters. So generative, it's not like intelligently designed, but we'll come back to that. And I want the music to be ambient, and then it also, obviously it's going to be hardware in modular in a rack. Now, the thing is initially I was looking at a synthesis-based approach. So like having a traditional synthesizer run through. So we'll have like an oscillator, which goes to a filter, which has an envelope attached to it. And then maybe that's run through like either a grain delay or a sample grain-based processor. Let's do grain-based processor. And then that would go into a delay and then a reverb and then finally output. So that was the idea. And then, and throughout that, you have some kind of modulation. So that would be most likely an LFO. There's a bunch of tricks you can do with LFOs to make it more than just a sine wave. So that was the idea at first. And what had happened is I used Vcv Rack. So if you're not familiar with Vcv Rack, let's see. Vcv Rack is really cool software. It's free. Just make an account, download the software, and then you can actually just do modular in the computer. You just click and drag everything. You make patches just like the real thing. And it's very valuable, especially as a learning tool, because honestly, like I didn't quite understand a VCA until I saw it. And there was a basic VCA module that had like a little meter on it, and that showed me what exactly a VCA did. I was like, oh, that's so simple. So yeah, like just stuff like that. It's super handy, and then you can prototype stuff. The only drawback is like obviously it's not analog, and then there's some quirks to it. Like it doesn't work quite the same on some modules, like the Chronoblob 2 that's on here. It wasn't quite the same. There was a few things that didn't work just like the real thing. But anyway, it's a valuable tool to have nonetheless. So let's see. Oh yeah, look at this, 22,000, over 2,500 modules available. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. So I recommend trying this out and then using the stock basic stuff and see what you can make out of that. So back to the project. I was looking at this and I made a little generative thing. I was using a Turing machine and like researching all this stuff, like what goes into a generative rack. and then making it ambient. So then you have to have like, this stuff, and then obviously modulating it, and like I did it all in here in VCV Rack, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, but the sound was kind of the same-ish. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna do a 24/7 stream on a synthesis-based rack, well, I'll just use VCV. So we don't need that. Or you don't have to do it in modular, in the hardware world. It'd be just for fun, just for like a better sound, like texture-wise and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, what's another way to do it? And the other way to do it would be a sample-based approach. So you take all this stuff, the same stuff, and instead of using an oscillator, we're going to use samples. Now, the cool thing you can do with samples is that samples are essentially infinite as far as texture, sound, like how things can be manipulated. And the idea was like, okay, so how could it make it maybe less boring? Because I don't know if anybody's ever tuned into an ambient synth rack modular generative thing. Like, it can get kind of boring after a while. So I was like, okay, how could we make it more interesting? And the way to do that and to make it more human is to use samples, but also to sample in real time. So now the idea went from generative synthesis to walking up to the machine, recording some kind of sample, whether it's an instrument or a voice or playing something off the radio. Like, the possibilities are endless, which is really cool with samples. In this regard, I actually don't like sampling because it's so infinite. Like, there's just so many possibilities. But in this case, that's the highlight that makes it great. So that's the approach has changed. So now we're no longer in oscillator synthesis. And the other thing about oscillators is, like, you're stuck to whatever the sound the oscillator has. There's not much more you can do with it once you've exploited it. But samples can just go on forever. And you could also use wavetable synthesis with certain sample modules and just use those as your oscillator. So this sample-based approach seemed to make more sense. And then we can also still use all the other synthesis-based processors to achieve a generative rack. So we decided to go with the sample-based approach. So let's delete this. All right. And I've decided that I want it in the small Intellijel pallet case also because I'm going to be traveling soon and I want to be able to stick it in my backpack and then possibly, bust it out on a plane. And if I want to jam some, I can jam on the pallet and this will fit in a backpack. So the next step, once you decide how big you want it to be, which this decision might come a little later after you kind of mock some stuff up in Modular Grid. But so I looked up the pallet case, and this is the info I wanted. I wanted to know how many modules it had, and I wanted to know how much power it could take, because these are all tallied up in Modular Grid once you mock it up. And as you can see, I actually copied and pasted the info from the website. Cool. So that's kind of the idea here. And then I'm just going to show you the process I went through to end up with the rack that I came up with. Not this one. I'm going to show you the rack, and then we're going to kind of work backwards. All right. So time-lapse, cool, super hippy-dippy name. I'm just going to talk through this real quick, and then we'll go through the process of like finding a module, researching it, etc. So here's the pallet case. What's cool about the pallet is, like I said, it fits in the backpack. It's very small. It has 2 buffered multipliers here. So what that means is, like, there's no pitch drop. Once you multiply a signal, like, there's no pitch drop. There's no loss of signal. So that's cool. For unbuffered mults, for passive mults, you could use like gates and stuff because you're not going to hear the difference in most cases. It also has an output here. It has MIDI input via USB, and then like there's a TRS cable that goes to MIDI, and then so you can use a regular MIDI keyboard, but you have to pair it with their MIDI modules. They have a 1U, and I believe they have a 3U size. but you'll see the synergy in just a second with like this TRS out. So I used the Intellijel 1U output module, and then I also have the headphones output. Now the cool thing about these two is that they actually tie together, so you don't have to patch your outputs. Like my final state is going to be this reverb, so I got these left and right outputs. I don't have to multiply this and then put 2 here and then put 2 here. You can they're actually linked in the back with a cable, and then you can just patch into one, and then the signal is duplicated across both. And then you have separate control over the output level on the TRS, and then you have headphone level control through the headphones. And so I picked these two modules for that reason, and it was a bonus. I found that out later that these two tied together, but the headphone went on the right because it's just a convenient spot, so the headphone cable will just drag out right here. So yeah, so let me talk through the rest of this real quick. The Quadratt and the VCAs. So everybody says you can never have enough VCAs. I was actually having a hard time finding 1U modules that I felt like I really needed in the rack. And I ended up coming across a video where someone did a generative thing with LFOs, and then they used the Quadratt. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So you can actually dial down the level of the LFO, so you have more control there. And then the VCAs, everybody says you can never have enough VCAs, and these perfectly fit. 2 of them fit perfectly into the space. And so I was like, okay, I can now use this, I don't know how you say it, ochd, ochd. This is 8 LFOs, but each one, so the bottom one is the slowest, and then it speeds up as you go through each output. So there's 8 of them, and then you have a rate control knob right here. That's one thing that's annoying about modular grid, is this little pop-up. And then you have CV control over that rate, so you can dial it down really slow and get some really nice slow LFOs. I was looking at the sloths modules. Those do like LFOs that can span over like hours per cycle. But actually this turned out to be better because this is 4 HP. It's plenty of modulation. And then so 4 of them are going to be tied into this attenuator, the Quadratt, and then also can tie in LFOs and then like modulate them or duplicate them and then modulate the VCA. And so you get some cool shapes with the LFOs that way. So that's where the thing came from. That this whole idea for doing this rack started because I had an extra FX aid. This small one was in my techno rack, and I had the big one, the 6 HP one. That was just kind of by accident because I was flip-flopping between the two. So I decided to put the big one in the techno rack and the smaller one in this rack. And so this module, the FX aid, is like a Big Sky pedal from Strymon. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that is like the quintessential ambient guitar pedal, right? So guitar players, they would have like a Strymon timeline, which is a very multifaceted delay. And then they'd have a Big Sky, and like that was really all they needed. So like people would have these huge pedal boards, and now all you have to have is like those 2 pedals. They have another pedal, the Night Sky, that's really cool, just as a side note. But anyway, so that's that whole pedal, the Strymon Big Sky in a 4 HP Eurorack module, which is so sick. So FX8, Happy Nerding, highly recommended. Now, just to tell you really quick, because this is the first thing you're going to do if you decide you want that. You want the Happy Nerding FX aid. There's 2 flavors. So you can go to the website. You can, I think the guy's name is Igor, is the maker, the creator of these. You can email him directly. The only people in the US that I know of that have it is Analog Haven. So we're going to open up this. And Sean is currently out of stock, but I see them pop up fairly often. So you can see this AB between the Big Sky and the module. It's really crazy. I think they use the same chips or something, but it's really amazing. So highly recommend checking this out. I do recommend Analog Haven. I've had good results with them. Sean is very responsive. They pack their gear well when they mail it. So so Analog Haven, check back here. So let's see, maybe they have the bigger one. Let's see, FX8XL. Yeah, and you can, of course, email them and say, hey, looking for this module. And then I believe you can also ask for a discount if that's, I don't know that he runs promotions very often, but that's another big thing. So all you modular companies out there that are selling gear, if you just have a running 10% discount, like my favorite place to buy gear, Detroit Modular, these guys are so cool. Their discount codes will usually work for a really long time. So even though the promo might be over, the coupon code might still work. And if not, you can call them and ask them for a discount, and they can discount pretty much everything as far as I know. So these are my favorite guys to get stuff from because they do free shipping. They ship free to Hawaii. So if you live in Hawaii, these are your guys. They ship free to Hawaii, and there's usually no tax. Hasn't been any tax for me, and then you get 10% off. So it's like the best price. They have great service. They're super fast. The shipping is priority mail. It comes really quick. And yeah, just great service all around. So the guys over there, I've been talking to, shoot, I'm getting my names crossed here. Nels, and hang on a second. These messages. Sorry, I don't want to get the name wrong. Because it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Detroit Modular. Trent. I wanted to say Trevor, but it's Trent. I've been talking to Trent. So don't bug him through his Instagram. Call the store. So Trent and Nels, those are your guys. Those are the ones that I've been talking to, and they have good recommendations on modules. So anyway, so back to the rack. Okay. So that's kind of like the process I go through. Like if I need to pick up a module, sometimes I'll pick up stuff from the UK, like Juno Records, but like you're going to pay a lot of shipping. Let's see if they have an FX aid. Yeah, they're out of stock too. So it's going to be a while. There's a lot of stuff out of stock. And the price is usually pretty good. Sometimes it's just enough to offset the shipping because the shipping is going to be a lot. But anyway, so continuing on, the delay. So I'm really into the basics. So like I think you need to at the absolute least have like a delay and a reverb. So the Mimeophone is an interesting delay that also has almost like it turns into a reverb, or it can. So that's really cool. That's just a bonus. But at the absolute basic, you need a delay and a reverb. You need a modulation source, and then let's get to the sound source and then the filter. So the sound source is the Morphagene. This is based on kind of like it's based on tape of the idea. And so basically when you drop a splice, it's like dropping a cue point, and you can repeat that cue point a bunch of times and split it up, and like, I mean, it does all this crazy stuff. You can pitch stuff up and down, play it in reverse. You can change the speed. Like it does all these things, and even like stuff that I haven't even delved into yet. But this is a really cool module. And then the most important part is that it can take stuff in, I want to say, I'm pretty sure it takes it in real time. But it can take line level signal. It has a built-in auto leveling function, so it can take modular, but can also take line level, which is huge. So if you don't know, especially if you're new to modular, is that there's mic level, which is the lowest, and then there's line level, which is 1,000 times. The signal is 1,000 times greater than mic level. And then there's modular level, which is like, I think +10. I think line is either +4 or -4. And then modular level is like +10. So it's pretty hot. Don't quote me on that. But basically the most essential thing to know is that mic level is super low, line level is in the middle, and modular level is really hot. So if you want to go from modular level to line level, you have to use an attenuator or an interface module. And then if you want to, or you might blow up your gear. If you don't, if you want to go from line to modular, you need a converter there too, just to increase the gain. But from mic to line, you need a lot. And then mic to modular is like even more. So that's important to note about the Morphagene is that it can take line level signals. So if I want to use a mic, I could use a mixer or something, or just an inline preamp. There is such a thing. And then just go straight into this module and then record the signal. So I don't have to use something extra, like the Expert Sleeper's Little Mikey. So this is a module that does all that stuff. Has a built-in, so you can use a mic, has a combo jack. You can use the cool thing, it has phantom power, 48 volt phantom power for mic. So it has a little gain knob. So I mean, this is a great module for what it does, but I don't need it. And being that this is such a small space, I want to get the most functionality out of modules as possible. So there's our sound source, and this is the SOS, sound on sound. So this knob, we go like full left, and then you hear what you're monitoring in, and then right is you're playing the tape, the recordings. So as I understand it, you can have this playing tape and then also monitor in and also record in. But I guess the question for me is, can I record while it's still playing? So that's something I have to research. But anyway, even if not, you could just play your tape signal and then have your delay go into like infinite repeat before feedback, and then it'll just hold that sound for enough time for you to record something in here, and then move on to the next sample, and then just keep going and repeat the process. So that's the idea. And then lastly, we have the QPAS, which is a quad filter, I believe, but it's stereo, which makes it cool. So you can do some interesting stuff with the left and right, and it has character to it. That's what I wanted. It has a nice color. I heard it in a friend's rack, and I was like, wow, I know that's the QPAS, isn't it? And I would always just hear this filter, this sound. It was very mid-rangey, but it was like saturated and kind of nice. And I was like, that's very cool. It has a nice character to it. So that's why I went with the QPAS. Other filters and stuff I was looking at the Jove. This is based on the Jupiter 6 filter right here. This is the new one, the 860 MK2. This is the old one. This is super popular, and the Micro Jove was also popular. It was DIY, but this is right in the middle, 10 HP, and it's the successor, so it's going to be better. So I was looking at this module for a filter, but that would just like free up more space for me to do some other things. Maybe get another modulation source like envelope. Sorry, I get my words crossed, but. Another module that probably would have made it in, but it's on pre-order, so it's going to be a while before anybody gets the second run of the beads. But this is based on the Clouds, and or it's the successor to Clouds, so it's even better than Clouds. But basically, it takes granular samples and just turns it into just like ethereal, ambient sounding cool stuff. So what's gonna be funny is like if you can just do this whole same thing with just this, that'd be awesome. So let me get rid of these here because I don't need any of these. But yeah, that's pretty much how I designed my rack. And I did this for weeks. Like I was going back and forth between the sides and like changing modules. Like, do I need to go synthesis based, or do I need a 2 HP loop to take a sound in and then loop it while this thing does its thing? And I mean, just like so many iterations and different things that change out. But that's why Modular Grid is so valuable, because you can see exactly where things need to go. You can plan out your rig. You can research stuff, which is what I'm about to go into next, is how do I research modules and then go about purchasing those modules. So one thing I did, let's say the Mimeophone, because we don't have a synth shop in Hawaii, in Maui, especially. At least on the neighboring island, they have like Guitar Center, and there's Easy Music Store, which is another big music store. But I don't think everybody's doing modular yet. But so this is the process I would go through. I'd go to YouTube. Let's see. Mimeophone. Look at the Mimeophone. And then just like watch some of this stuff. And then do some research, like listen to the sound, how's it go. Oh, and this is the rig I saw where I was like, so they had the ochd, the octad, and I was like, oh, okay, that must be a dope module. They had the Mimeophone, they're pretty much the same thing except their sound source, and I was like, that's where I went with Morphagene. And they had the Quadratt, and then also let's do Mimeophone Ambient. These are really cool series. I've seen a couple of these videos. There was one in particular. Oh, this one. I loved this video. This, when I was researching just generative in general, this video was so cool. I love this first sequence. So nice. So serene. I've had a BIA, so I know that sound. It can be a tame, but that is definitely a sweet spot to get like that nice square wave sound. And then the Three Sisters is, I don't even know if they're making them. Like, they're doing a run, but it's going to be a while before anybody gets them. I think they're still working on the Just Friends envelope module that's still on pre-order. And then you had the Mimeophone. So like you start to see like in these racks, like, you know, these people have all researched and made these decisions too. And it's like, okay, well, maybe Mimeophone is really dope and I should be checking that out. You can also sort modules. Let's go to delay. And you can sort them here. You know, this has been here for a long time, but I just recently checked this out. And then you can sort them by popularity, like how many are in racks. And check this out. Morphagene is number 3, which is weird. I mean, yeah, I guess it kind of does delay. But the Mimeophone's number 4. Clouds is number 1, which is going to be beads. The Disting Mark IV, it does so many things. That's why it's in so many racks, which makes it really popular. But I'd have to say this is the number 1 delay. Even though it's number 4, this is the number 1 delay. And it's in a ton of racks. So you know it's going to be good. It's been tried. It's been tested. People have been using it, like Pico DSPs in a lot of racks because it's small and it sounds pretty good. And then, so, yeah, that's another good way to make sure, like, you know, if you're going to get some weird, obscure module from a maker, you know, like, you can't go wrong with any of these top modules. But if you're going to go obscure, like, make sure you do your research on it. And if you can, try it out in person. And also, a lot of times, these modules won't be as popular because they're not being made that much, right? So, like, they're pretty hard to get. So, like, the Time Safari, I haven't seen one come up in a really long time. And I've only seen one come up in the used Facebook group. But it's still pretty popular. So anyway, that's another way to just check your stuff, make sure that, you know, you're in the right direction. You know, you don't have to base all your choices off of popularity. That's, you know, otherwise everybody have the same rack, but just to make sure you're in the clear and you're good. You know, the stuff's been tested and lots of people using them, so like it's got to be pretty dope. Cool. So that's how I researched this. And then another thing you want to do, it's not as fun, but you want to take a peep through the manual for whatever module you're looking at. Let's see. Yeah, these are pretty short. They're pretty short. Just kind of see like what the manufacturer intended, you know, what it does, the inputs and the outputs. Like, yeah, this is a little cryptic sometimes. Like, for example, I want to know what this number 24 does, this little circle right here. Hold, no, that's not what I was looking for. Which one is it? Oh, it's on the Morphagene. I have a question about one of their inputs, but yeah. So take a skim through it. You don't have to, you know, understand it and read it all and understand it all, but, you know, just take a skim so you know what's up. You know, you have an idea. But trying in person is definitely the best way. Cool. So let's see. So yeah, so then after, you know, you watch a bunch of videos, get some ideas, you know, watching the videos is really helpful too, because you might see some stuff that people are doing with certain modules that you didn't think of. Yeah, so that's really cool. All right, so let's say from here, we got everything planned out, you know what you want in your rig, and now you have to make a purchase. So let's check everything first. Remember we had plus, was it 1200? plus and minus 1200 milliamps. And we are at plus 738 at 12 volts and minus 475. So we're in the clear. We have plenty of power. I would count your modules just because it counts this top one. This is a module. It's just up for looks though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have a max of 12. So we're good. We have 10 modules, and then this is the price. That gives you an idea of what it's going to be. Like I said before, like any retailer, you should be able to get 10% off. No problem. Most stuff. Cool. And so then the process starts. It's like, I'm going to go to Detroit Modular first. And the first thing we want to check out is the case. So it's the Intellijel palette, the 62 HP version. I do like the Intellijel cases. I've had a few different cases, and the Intellijel has been my favorite so far, with the added utility bonus. Okay, so it's on pre-order. I would call and find out what the estimated delivery date is. So on pre-order, but like what I was saying, the utilities they offer up here, like the 2 buffered mults is so huge, you don't have to have other modules taking that up or use the splitters or anything. So that's super helpful. So I'm just going to skip ahead and tell you right now, the only place that has 62 HP pallets is Nightlife Electronics. They're in Canada. The cool thing about Canada is they use US plugs. We use the same thing. I don't know if they're US plugs, but it's the same exact plug. And the thing is that you're going to have to pay just a little bit more. I didn't message them to ask if I could get a discount, but let's check this out. 62. So what I do is see to USD, how much is that? Sometimes the search is funny. There you go. So yeah, it's a little higher. If you could get 10% off somewhere, you could get it for $270 and shipped free. Here it's about $350, and then you're gonna have to pay some shipping. But you know, like it depends. Are you gonna wait, or do you want your rig, pretty soon? So the shipping, I think, was like $50. So you want to get a couple other modules. So the other thing I know that nobody else has right now is the ochd. So we'd have to get this from here. So that would help offset the shipping cost. Like I said, I could have called them, but I was just like, whatever. I'm just gonna get these 2 modules. Let's get this thing on the road. So I do that. But yeah, like for example, another store I like is Control Mod or Control. Their website, their domain is Control Mod, and you see they have a coupon running, Moms 10 for 10% off Mother's Day. Excludes pre-orders, so watch out for that. But yeah, they usually have a lot of stuff. Let's see if they have the ochd, OCHD. Yeah, see, this is on pre-order. What's another store? Like Analog Haven, as mentioned before. Another one, Patchworks. I like Patchworks. Those guys are super cool. The thing about these companies that you have to understand is that everything is good until it's not good, right? And what I mean by that is if you ever have to go through the refund process with the company and there's friction there, that is not a company that you want to work with. So I can tell you that Patchworks, I picked up a module from them. I had issues with it, and it was like instantaneous response. They're like, no problem. We'll set you up an RMA. We're going to cover the shipping. And it was like, wow, so frictionless. So I highly recommend Patchworks as well. I haven't had to do returns with Detroit or Control yet, but these are my main go-tos. Analog Haven as well. I had an issue with the module. It had a dent in it. And he offered me a couple options. Sean did, and I ended up taking one of the options just to get a little bit of a discount on a module. But he said I could send it back, no problem. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying is like most of these all these companies are going to be just fine. But there are some companies, like there's a bigger company that I'm really not a fan of, because there's so much friction to do a return. but definitely not Patchworks. Patchworks was dope. So I appreciate you guys over at Patchworks. I appreciate everyone over at Detroit Modular. Trent and Nels, much appreciation. Nightlife has been good, and then Control as well. Oh, I did do some returns with Control. That was also not a problem. So yeah, like I said, it's good until it's not. So I like supporting these smaller shops rather than big giant companies. But anyway, so thank you guys for what you do. It's really appreciated. But anyway, so yeah, so yeah, you find what you can. Like they have a Mimeophone in stock. Cool. So let's add that. I don't know that they have coupons going out, but they also are doing free shipping. Yep, over orders over 75, which is pretty much everything in modular. Yep, and then also you can't forget cables. Let's see. Let's do. I like the black market modular cables. The thing about cables you got to understand is like a lot of these companies, they're all just getting them manufactured at the same factory in China. They just have different molds, so they look a little different. But I actually looked into having cables made, and I saw like all of these companies. They just had different designs, but it was like in their example products, it was like, oh, there's black market, there's like Luigi's right angle cables. I mean, it's they did all these cables. Like, oh, I just found the guys that did it. So I looked into have some custom cables made, but it just, you have to have thousands, and it's just like, I don't need thousands of patch cables. But yeah, I've liked the black market modular ones. They're going in and out of stock. But in this case, from this little rack, you definitely need, I'd count up your patch points. You would sit here and count these up, but what I ended up deciding was getting about 25 of the 9 centimeter ones and 25 of the 25 centimeter ones. 50 centimeters, I have a few already, but I figured I only need like 1 or 2 if that ever came up, and that would be like patching from here to the other end and still having a bunch of loose cable left. So watch out for that. But definitely the most popular, as you can tell, is the 25 centimeter. That's super versatile, and then the ones next to each other. Another cable you want to check out are the Tip Top stackables. These are cool cables. I haven't used them too much. I mean, they do come in handy when you need them. I would recommend getting a few of the shorter ones. So 250 centimeters, that's a huge cable. For this rack in particular, you want the smallest one, which I think it's the green one. I only know this because I have 2 of pretty much each, except for the super long ones from Tip Top, the stackables. Yeah, I don't have to go there now, but, well, hang on, since we're here. I don't know what's up with the search engine here. So, or it might be the red ones, actually. 30? No, it's the green ones for sure. Okay, cool. These 20 centimeter ones. Yeah, I have a couple of these. I recommend getting a few of the small ones. Maybe just 1 or 2 of this one, and then maybe like 1 or 2 of the red one, and then 1 or 2 of the light blue one. Those are pretty short. Because you have to remember, if you're going to split signal, like, it doesn't have to be super long. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So that's the process I go through. You saw how I kind of put things together, how I research stuff. So like I said, just an overview real quick. You find something you think you want, you see it on a video, and then you look up that module, and then you watch other videos specifically tailored to that module, and then yeah, you put in your rack in Modular Grid, see how it is, see if it works well, and then if you make your decision. Like, I sat on this setup for at least a week or so before I decided, yeah, I'm gonna pull the trigger on this whole thing. Yeah, and then you just start going through your shops. Like, in order of preference, I say Detroit Modular number 1, Control is my number 2 guys, Patchworks number 3, Analog Haven number 4, and then Nightlife is the new one. Yeah, last resort, just because stuff's not in stock. But the order of this really just has a lot to do with the running discount. So you want to make sure you get your 10% off on all your modules. call the companies and ask them if they don't have a promo going. Call them and say, hey, can I get 10% off of this order? This is what I'm looking at, and then they'll usually be happy to hook you up. That's pretty standard in the industry. It seems like 10% off is not too much to ask. Now on boutique-y stuff, like really rare stuff, yeah, it might be like mannequins modules. Like you're probably not going to get 10% off mannequins modules because they're in such high demand. But everything else, it's pretty good. So, yep. So that's the rig. The next video, I'm going to show you the rig, and then we'll check out some tracks from it. So cool. I hope this helps everybody out in some way or some form. Spend time in Modular Grid, spend time researching stuff on YouTube, watching videos, asking friends, spend time in VCV Rack, like trying to figure this stuff out, like see if you can see this stuff in person and play with it. Like that's a huge thing. I just don't have that convenience here, but that would help me out so much. And then like you can see in my other rigs, let's see, is this the current setup? I think this is, I was playing around with it. Yeah, so you can see I duplicate it and I play around with even more. This rack right here has evolved so much, and like hours and hours of time and research have gone into this to make it what it is. And then like once I got the modules, things changed. And like see up here, like the voltage block took up this mimetic digitalis, the carbon, and the javelin. The voltage block took up that entire spot. And so I decided, well, the mimetic kind of does what the voltage block does, sort of. It's quicker because it can just spit out a random sequence. Actually, the voltage block does that as well. But I have the option now to do traditional, instead of just low-pass gate filter, I can do regular filter with an envelope. So that's an option. But like I said, like this is just evolving constantly, and that's what's super fun about Modular, is that things change all the time. New stuff comes out. There's better ways to do things. There's more efficient ways to do things. I mean, it's just so much fun. So spend time, take your time. There's no rush, except for when you get your rig and you want to, when you figure out what it's going to be and you want that thing to show up really quick. Yeah, so that's what I recommend doing. Hopefully that helps you out. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to talk about Modular. Yeah, all right. Okay, as promised, I got the rig set up. It's ready to go. So we went from planning to purchasing it, and it's all patched up, ready to go. I fed it some sample of the intro from Tycho A Walk. It's an epic intro. Sounds really nice and serene. And so that's all. It's just doing its thing on that. It's just self-modulating. You're going to hear some rhythmic stuff, and that's just kind of where the splices happened. I guess they didn't splice at the zero crossing, so you get like little pops and clicks, and that just makes it even more interesting. So as far as Modular goes, what makes this super cool is that there's no clock. Nothing is being clocked. The Mimeophone has a built-in clock, but it's just doing its delay stuff, but there's no master clock. So any rhythmic stuff is like just a nice surprise. But anyway, you'll see. Enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.